Welcome back, everybody. We're here with Steve Phillips.
Hello.
Steve, welcome.
Thank you.
Now, Steve is actually a gentleman and a scholar because he teaches Module 4 of our bachelor program, Week 4, which is all on CMA, statistics, things like that. And new realtors coming in, and experienced realtors as well, are always curious when they're doing CMAs how much you adjust for different features in homes, different structural things, time, all these different things in homes. So Steve has been a great resource. And do you ever get people asking you what you adjust for?
All the time. And I actually drove myself crazy in the early part of my career trying to figure this out. As you're probably aware, I'm fairly analytical and
It's true.
like to examine every last detail. But I came to the conclusion that there isn't one right answer, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about a bit today. But if you try and look for that one right price, you're just going to go nuts.
Yeah, exactly. So this is, one of the things we say in our course is we have a question about, an inaccurate CMA. And to Steve's point on that, it's the point is there is no right number. So for those of you that are beating your head against the wall, who have listened to other realtors historically in the past, who have said, oh no, this is a definitive price for this definitive feature. Don't worry, there is no exact science in this. One thing I just want to speak to as well, just really quick on this, is that even when you're looking at comparable properties, you are taking what is in that past listing as gospel. And have you ever been to a property where the features were listed wrong? It was laminate and not hardwood. They said it was a walkout basement. It was actually like a walk-up basement, or something, or they said that had a bathroom when really or a bedroom that may not have qualified, or
pre-RMS measuring, post-RMS measuring.
Gosh, but when we look at these properties, you guys, once they have that sold S on it, you assume everything is exactly the same. And the reality is it's not. So you're starting with inaccurate data to start with, or questionable data. So when you get questionable data, you can't get more than questionable results, which means it's just a range. But
one other point on that real quick.
Yeah, please.
Let's say you nailed the price and you did find that one right price. Markets change, the market shifts, and It can happen in 2 weeks, and your price is completely out of whack. So
yeah,
it's a process.
How many of you in 2015 were making price adjustments for your comparables pre-OPEC announcements? Or pre-Suncor newspaper announcements? How many of you are adjusting for that? Because as consumer confidence changes, and there's too many things to consider. So we just do our best, and we come up, and we know that we might need to adjust. But let's throw everybody a bone here, because that's exactly what we're going to do. So one of the things we're going to do is talk about, some structural features, location, things like that, and what we would use for adjustments. So one of the things we're going to be following here, if Kelly could throw up on the screen here, is this is an excerpt from our bachelor program, Module 4. We have our CMA pricing and statistics, day 4. If you guys want these notes, just email Kelly, or we can send them out as well. Actually, what we'll probably do is send these out to the group, and you guys can have a look through. But it goes through a lot of the different things we're talking about. So let's start with structural features. So Steve, things like roof and different comparables. How do you start to find? Give us some places where you look to start determining the value of these.
Well, starting from scratch, you always want to start with the comparables and find as comparable a property as you can. Different reference resources that you can use are city tax assessments.
Whoa.
Yeah.
How would you use the city tax assessment? Because they're accurate. We're told never to price off of those.
Never price off of a tax assessment, but you can see the percentage difference in what the city actually values two different properties. So maybe you have a property that is backing onto a ravine, and the only comparables are on the other side of the street. So I apologize for my stuttering. I'm on cold medication, so I'm going to blame that.
Do you have the capacity to be presenting?
No, don't take anything I say for gospel. But if you see, okay, they're giving that view a 5% value over top of the neighbors across the street, you can use the tax assessments that way.
Yeah, perfect. Another great resource that's available that we'll be kind of reading from a little bit, and we're going to go ahead and update as a company as well, but Kelly, you can throw this up as well. This is this Earl and Jackson, or I guess Jackson now, home renovation guide. And it says 2013 there, but don't get caught up on that because it goes through and has percentage of return that is given for different improvements. So it says how much would it cost to get a professional to do this, and then how much would it cost, how much percent return on value. And it's an appraisal company that put this together, updated it for years. They stopped updating it as of 2013. We're talking about marginal differences, and you can easily find online the cost of some of these improvements. So this is one guide though that you can use when you're doing pricing. So one of the things to just talk about here is let's use the roof as an example. So we're looking at the roof here. How much, what it costs, let's say we're talking about a 1,100 square foot bungalow. How much does it cost to improve the roof? What's the actual value? What do you think?
Well, using the guides, because we'll talk about adjustments and that kind of stuff in a bit, but using the guide, they say that it is approximately $3 to $4 a square foot for an asphalt roof, 25 to 30 years. 1,100 square foot house. We always ballpark that $10,000 figure just as realtors, and you kind of put your thumb in the air.
Yeah.
But an 1,100 square foot house is probably $5,000 or $6,000. Now they're saying that the return, and I want to emphasize the fact that this is on a professional doing it.
That's right.
Not if your client decides I can shingle the roof and go up there. That probably take away value. But they're saying that the return on that investment would be 75 to 95% of the dollars invested.
So if I was going to say, there's a house with a new roof, house with an old roof, we probably say somewhere between $7,000 to $10,000 as a credit.
Yeah.
Depending on the size of the home again.
Right.
So, and again, it's like, well, how did you come to that number? It looks like you guys are doing it. Well, you got to look after general perception in the marketplace. So one of the things that we have down here is talk to builders to get upgrade or typical development pricing. Now that doesn't mean that it's worth that. If you talk to a builder and said, how much does it cost to put a fountain and a goldfish pond in your backyard, and the developer says, oh, it's 70 grand, do you think a buyer's going to come in and say, I love that, that's worth $70,000 to me?
Yeah, not at all, and value is in the perception of the person, and that's the challenge with making adjustments like this.
Cool.
The other point, sorry.
No, keep going.
With the builders, make sure that you're talking to a builder that knows pricing, because if you're just talking to a laborer that's working in the concrete, you're probably not going to know the price per square foot of what it's going to take to do some of these other adjustments. So make sure you're talking about somebody who knows what they're doing.
And now you, Steve, you alluded as well, there's an old saying in real estate that is, don't put a nickel in unless you're going to get a dime out. And one of the biggest things here, your clients will say to you, should I be renovating? Should I be adding on all these different features? And the answer to that is typically no. We'll talk about a few things that do make a difference,
right?
But it's very few and far between because, again, once you pay somebody, a contractor, their 20% markup, you are going to be losing money on the value there. Now, what happens if they say, well, I'll just do it myself?
I hate that answer. I always tell my clients, and we'll use the $500,000 home, if you can't do a $500,000 job, don't do it.
Right.
Because you're just going to take away value from the property if you don't do a good enough job.
Absolutely.
So.
Amateur work of any kind can detract if someone just has to redo the whole thing.
Right.
Another thing, you can feel free to talk to realtors to get ideas on structural differences. So walkout basements versus non-walkout basements. You have two builder plans, exactly the same. One's a walkout, one's not. The builder will charge you for that, but what's the value of that in an actual marketplace?
Again, it's completely relative to what the people want to use the property for.
Yeah.
So I really don't like adjustments for stuff that, to some people, that could mean the world if they have teenagers coming and going, and other people, they don't care if they have a second walkout or a second entrance, or maybe they want to turn it into a suite. But if I was going to do an adjustment, I'd be talking to the builders and asking them what their upgrade costs are for that walkout basement, on a slope lot.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing I would do with that one especially is find another home that's exact comparable, pull the city assessment, get the city's perceived value. So you say, okay, so the city says it's worth about $35,000. The builder says it's worth $30,000, and you look at some other sold homes that are comparable, and it's worth about $28,000. So now you can say, all right, all these factors combined, probably somewhere between $30,000 and $35,000. Make your best guess.
Perfect.
Location, we actually talked about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Steve, what about, now you mentioned the HPI, and tell us a little about the use of HPI, and we'll jump to the end here, for market timing, but also location, because if you have a house that's in Bears Paw and you can only find comparables in Springbank,
right.
What does the HPI do and how does that affect things?
Well, for those of you who don't know, the HPI is the home pricing index that CREB compiles on a monthly basis. It's based off of 2005 as the starting point, and then up and down from there. Attend the CMA course if you want to find out how to use the HPI, but essentially the gist of it, if you can only find comparables in a different community, you can find what that home pricing index is in that community, what the percent variation is for the community you're pricing in, and adjust accordingly.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Absolutely. So one community, we always look at like Hawkwood versus Edgemont. Which one is worth more? Well, you might say, oh, well, one has schools, one doesn't. But you can look and see the typical home in Hawkwood, the typical home in Edgemont, and see kind of a percentage difference.
Right.
And if you had to pull a comparable, we don't advise it. It's better to go back further back in time and pull one from the same community. But if you had to, then you could have a look at that. How would they use it for time adjustments?
Time adjustments as well, because you can actually see the values as they increase or decrease over certain time periods, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, and it goes all the way back to 2005.
Nice.
So when you're doing time adjustments and you can only find comparables in that community, and we're jumping ahead a bit, but then you can adjust from the comparables that sold 3 years ago to what that value in the community is now.
There's a property valuation course that not everyone's taken, but in the brokers program that talks about this, and they say the very first thing you do is adjust for time. So sometimes you look at your comparables, they're 6 months old, adjust for time first.
Right.
And then start doing all your other adjustments.
One other point on the HPI and the tax assessments and all of this research is that when you get an agent that might not be educated and they're coming in lowballing you, or they're like, I can't find any comparables that justify that price, you can just say, this is where I got it.
Yep.
And then they can educate their client, and you can do a better job for your seller that way.
Yeah, because most times the agent wants the deals to come together, and the client just needs to see and understand the value.
Yeah.
And as soon as everyone's on the same page, now you've done everyone a service.
Education is key.
Yeah. Okay, so this is what everyone's been waiting for. People say, oh, well, aesthetic features. The question with aesthetic features, we'll go back to the same thing. It's like other comparables first, look at this home renovation guide, talking to builders, upgrades, etc. Let's talk about, and this is right from this home renovation guide again, but interior paint as an example. And interior paint is pretty special because you can actually really improve the value.
Correct, and it's one of the few things that actually gets you more than what you invested into the property. So return on investment is best spent on your interior painting.
It's actually one of the only ones in this entire guide where the appraiser said if you get a professional to do it, it's the only one that actually adds more value than the cost of what you put into it. So the cost range for a 1,100 square foot bungalow, obviously main floor, $3,000 to $5,000, probably closer to that $5,000 if you're getting everything done, and return up to 110% of that value.
Right.
So
we have some excellent providers through the Best My Nest program that will give you legitimate quotes, because painters are one of those industries that can gouge you pretty good if you don't get a number of quotes, so pay attention to that. Now, I want to put a caveat on interior painting.
Please do.
Everybody in the city says that they want something unique and special and individual, and as soon as something like that comes up, it never sells.
Yep.
Appeal to the masses. If something is incredibly bright and artistic, then maybe you do want to make it appeal to more people.
Beauty and value are in the eyes of the beholder, especially with paint.
Right.
Something that's a little bit more standard, because it typically looks good. Let's talk about hardwood. There's carpet versus hardwood. How much do you adjust for that? Well, the first question is, how much would Home Depot, Mint Flooring, anybody else charge you to put in hardwood. That's sort of the maximum point of saying, okay, this is going to cost, and according to this guide, $9,000 to $13,000, depending on the hardwood you've got, and that's about 1,000 square feet. $9,000 to $13,000, $9 to $13 a square foot. But what kind of value would they actually get back that you would be adjusting for on that?
The Jackson renovation guide says 60 to 90% return on investment. And I think that's fair to say, because as soon as it's installed and you're living in it, then it starts getting damaged.
Yeah.
So it's not 100%. Will it look fantastic? Yes. It's something that I noticed when buyers walk into a property, everybody looks down. And
Totally.
flooring goes a long ways when you're showing property. Everybody, just when you're showing property, should be looking up, because that's where all the issues are.
Yes.
But everybody looks down. It's crazy.
So maybe, so we say, it's up to $13,000 to get it installed, depending on the quality of hardwood. But we'd probably only be adjusting, $6,000 to $9,000 for that.
Right.
Depending. And obviously we're talking about, again, 1,000 square foot bungalow, 1,100 square feet. If you have this massive home that's an estate home, and you might be $30,000 to replace your flooring, depending.
Yeah.
So again, this is all economies of scale here, but to keep it palatable for people. So then you would just say, okay, how much? What's 80% of that value? That's kind of what we're going to give. But remember, some buyers may not like your paint color, some buyers may not like your hardwood floors, and some people, I know, there's some houses out there that usually owned by Europeans, at some point, walk in, the whole thing is tile.
Right.
Or the upstairs bedrooms are in tile.
People with allergies.
Yes. Yes.
Typically, older people like tile better than they like hardwood floor. So.
And that'll last longer, but who wants to walk around on a tile floor all day?
Yeah.
And some people do. So again, in that case, someone will say, oh, well, how much is it, a tile versus hardwood? Well, now we're talking about difference in taste and opinion again.
Yeah, and there is adjustments that you can make on that tile, $9 to $11 a square foot, so pretty comparable. So would you adjust for that? Probably not.
Right, right. So let's talk about basement development. Unfinished basement versus finished basement. How much is it worth?
In here, they're saying that the basement, $50 to $75 a square foot, let's call it $60 on a 1,000 square foot example, $60,000 to have a professional develop it. Will you recap that back or recoup that back? No.
No way.
Yeah. Where basement developments are beneficial is when you can get a lot of the contractors that or you can get a deal and you can get it a much lower price per square foot to renovate.
Yeah.
Or
you play contractor yourself. You don't do any of the work yourself, but you save sort of the 20% contractor markup.
Correct. And even then, that's going to break even, because they're saying 50 to 75% return on investment.
Yeah.
So if you're a contractor, expect to get dollar for dollar, so not much of an investment.
Yeah, so 1,100 square foot bungalow, finished basement. I'd probably say 40 to 50,000, depending on as value return coming back. Post up in the comments. One of our points here is talk to other realtors who have done this, and it might cost way more, the value perception when the client walks down here. See, the thing is, the client always walks down, it's just a coat of paint. They don't realize how much paint in the butt it is to put that coat of paint on, or the work it is to do, but they always think, oh, we'll just do it. That's why when I sold any of my houses, I'm just like, make it look good as you can, because they'll come in and think, oh, I'll just put in hardwood. How much does that cost? Oh yeah, $5,000. They don't think of the fact that they practically have to move out, move all their furniture, store it, live in a dust-filled home, get cleaners in.
Casings.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. But buyers are always just like, oh, it'll just be easy. And then their $6,000 hardwood job turned into a $40,000 kitchen renovation.
And that's the same thing with the basement development, is you're selling the idea of what they can do with that property.
One more I want to touch on before we wrap up here and give our final thoughts about adjustments. Garages. It's so funny. We talk about comparables. It's like someone says, well, what's the value of an attached double garage versus a home with a detached double garage? That's good. Look at comparables. We're talking about very, very different homes at that point. But Steve, what about a house that has no detached garage and a house that has a detached garage?
It's a bit of a loaded question, because and we were talking about Bonavista, for example, what can have a detached or an attached garage, but you have to go out of your home to get into the attached garage. So is that worth anything?
Yes.
On paper it says double attached garage. It's attached to the home, but you have to go outside to get into it. So That being said, I think comparables is the best way to get the models. They're saying a new 24 foot by 24 foot double detached garage with heating and insulation is $25,000 and up. And they don't actually have the attached one in here.
No, because most homes are built from start with the design considerations for an attached garage. Most people don't add one on.
And they're saying that the 65 to 85% of your costs will be recouped. Now, if you can keep your pricing down, and I know that we have a garage builder, Gecko Garages with Best My Nest that does it for a lower cost than this, you can actually make money on garages if you can keep your costs down low enough.
Right, and I know that even as someone, if you instead of insulating the garage and fully finishing it, as soon as you have a garage, there's no more value perception. It's like someone says, oh, it has a garage. What? It's not insulated and heated. Some people that are car guys and everything or plan on using it for a workshop, that matters to. But the majority of people, they just say, oh, look, it has a garage. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Or it's insulated, but you don't need to install the heater in it. You still get the same value perception for the value of the garage.
The other thing to keep in mind is if you don't do any of these things, you can sell the potential of it with a purchase plus improvements mortgage.
Explain what that is, because it's such a good point.
You can put in a mortgage in place that will allow you to essentially mortgage the cost to add a garage. And so the buyers can pay only $5 more a month to get this garage put in. So selling the potential is often more valuable than the structure itself.
Absolutely, and that way it saves your clients the headache of doing it, and you guys can get started in the process right away, so you don't miss the current market conditions.
Right.
And because you don't know what it's going to be like tomorrow, and you never know. These projects always go over budget, and they always take longer than you expect.
Everybody gets frustrated, everybody gets fed up, and then you end up selling a place with a half-finished garage.
Yeah, so people always say, well, you have this house, double garage, how much is it? Well, double garage, $25,000. Well, what if it's a single versus a double? I always give kind of an extra $10,000 in my head for the value difference. But I mean, really, it's tough it'd be cheaper to knock your single down to put a double in. So maybe it's $25,000. I mean, this just comes in where it's going to depend on what the buyer is using it for. So Steve, closing thoughts here. Let's talk about why do you hate adjustments, and then if you hate them so much, how do you do a CMA?
Well, I do hate adjustments because of the fact that there isn't one value for anything.
Right.
And I always use the example of a fireplace. And we've got a Great Dane that loves to lay in front of a fireplace. So in my wife's mind, a fireplace is worth $25,000. Like, she'd pay a ridiculous amount just to have a fireplace. In my mind, I don't care if we have a fireplace. The dog can lay on the mat.
Yep.
So it's completely perceived value, and to one person, the upgrades that you're talking about might be worth something, and to the other people, not so much. Same thing with bedrooms, same thing with garages, like your mechanic example. So I always prefer to use the comparable adjustments, and you find the price range, and I know that homes comparable to this are selling between $500 and $525. It's my job to do the marketing that's going to attach somebody emotionally to that property and fetch my seller the top dollar.
You almost take the property as a whole,
Yeah.
Not these individual specs that come in. Because I don't know a single buyer that walks into a property and the first thing they do is say, okay, so let's go through. I see they have the upgraded baseboards and they have this and that, and I think they have stone countertops and blah, blah, blah. And when you go down to an offer, they'll say, oh, well, that home has this. They might ask you a question or two, but they're not even asking those questions unless they already see the perceived value in the property as a whole.
Right.
So we always ask, how does it feel? And I've talked to appraisers. I talked to an appraiser and he laughed. And he's like, that we've been adjusting $3,500 for fireplaces since 1970.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been adjusted up. That was 45 years ago. That they were adjusting this meaningful amount or meaningless amount for fireplace, and it hasn't changed. So he says, as an appraiser even, you have to do it based off of value perception.
Right.
And when you walk in, that's why paint can make such a big difference, or strategically placed crown molding. You have a doorway that's got a casing on it, that's going to be worth more for a buyer to just view like, oh wow, this is a luxurious home, versus anything that you can do by putting in upgraded carpet or upgraded hardwood, because hardwood is hardwood. People see it and they're like, oh, it's hardwood.
Yeah.
Look at that. And if you have a good eye for matching colors, or you get a stager to help you a little bit, have your clients talk to you even before they do renovations. That's the number one reason why I touch base with people. And I say, you know what, if you're even thinking about it, have me in, let's take a look. You don't want to list for 6 months. It's a great way to start the relationship, to give them a 15-minute opinion on some stuff that do give perceived value. There aren't hard and fast numbers. Use comparables to adjust, use the HPI to adjust up time, and just do it that way. How does this property feel to a buyer?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that drives me nuts when and unfortunately a lot of realtors do it this way, and they just market the specs of a home.
Yes,
and
totally.
Anybody can look at the pictures and, oh yeah, it's got granite, and they can figure out the specs just by looking at the pictures, but what they can't figure it out is what it's like to live in the community, what this home has to offer their lifestyle. And that's what we sell as realtors to get top value.
My biggest recommendation to you guys to get comfortable with this, look at a lot of inventory. Look at properties. If you're doing nothing today and you say, well, I don't really have any clients to work with, go out and look at 5 or 6 properties. Attend some of the realtor open houses. Typically, you're going to get a free lunch, which is great, but go ahead and look and just talk to people about the value comparisons. Look at what something was listed for, follow up what it's sold for, look what the neighbors sold for, and you're going to get very, very knowledgeable at this. But of course, if you don't know anything, we're going to send out these guides. We'll attach them to the email. You can start from there. You can call one of our best Manette suppliers, get a quote, call Home Depot, talk to builders, get some ideas on the value that it takes to renovate these, and then you can do some adjustments based off of these reports.
Right.
Awesome.
I agree.
Steve, we hope you get well.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time in coming on.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. And we are going to end you guys with a little bit of a motivational message from a 14-year-old, and we'll see you guys next week.
Have a great week.